Yeah, welcome back to Afia TV News tonight. And our conversation segment, of course, we'll speak about the protection initiatives for women, children, and the vulnerable in Enugu State. The rights of women and children are always a central focus of government policy making. Protecting children and women from violence, abuse, and exploitation requires a comprehensive child protection system that addresses the full spectrum of risk that they face. And according to the UN Women, 1 in 3 women worldwide experience physical or sexual violence, mostly by an intimate partner. Violence against women and girls is a human rights violation, and the immediate and long-term physical, sexual, and mental consequences for women and girls can be devastating, including death. Violence negatively affects women's general well-being and prevents women from fully participating in the society. It impacts their families, their community, and the country at large. It has tremendous costs, from greater strains on healthcare to legal expenses and losses in productivity. According to data, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner. And this includes a range of behaviors like slapping, shoving, pushing, and in some cases might not be considered domestic violence. 1 in 7 women and 1 in 25 men have also been injured by an intimate partner. This is according to reports. 1 in 10 women have been raped by an intimate partner, but data is unavailable for male victims. Well, joining me now is Honorable Mrs. Ngozi Valentina Eni, and she's the Commissioner for Children, Gender Affairs, and Social Development. Good evening, ma'am. Welcome to the show. It's good to have you. You look so beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, before you became a commissioner in this government, you were once the Director General of Idodo Zone Women Association, and you worked towards the empowerment of women and children. And of course, you are still the co-founder of Women Support Women Community Network. You've constantly spoken about being dedicated to your job, the need to see women empowered and children thrive. On the 9th of May, you had a 2-day sensitization program in the Enugu West Senatorial Zone on ending gender-based violence. First is, why did you choose Enugu West? And do you have cases of violence there, or is that just a startup to your moves?
Thank you. The case of Enugu West Senatorial Zone, we chose that zone because, of course, there were indicators that most of the abused children are from that zone, especially the some places like Aninri or Axis. If you can recall the incident of the little Happiness Nwafo from Anambra, she is from that zone. And we had, the day I went to Anambra because of Happiness Nwafo, there was another case that I had at the office before proceeding to Anambra, and the same girl is from that zone. So we felt it is better. Of course, we are going to attend to the 3 senatorial zones, but we felt it is better we begin from Enugu West Senatorial Zone, since most of the cases we have. We also had a case of child trafficking from that zone also. That was why we began our sensitization from there.
Great. Well, you will agree with me that when we speak of gender, it's usually assumed to be women. Whilst gender is man and woman, and I can say that the media is also part of this sometimes misconception, because when the media says gender, is sometimes referred to as woman, but yet data states that men may undergo gender-based violence and not even speak up about it in the capacity of gender affairs. Now, how would your ministry work with organizations targeted at men's well-being to ensure their safety as well? Because in that category, the man is the vulnerable one.
Yeah, we encourage men to speak up. Yesterday was the International Day for the Boy Child. We visited some boys' schools, and during my advocating and talking to them, I encourage them to speak up. Of course, men also go through abuse. And when you say gender-based violence, we are not only speaking about physical abuse. There are other forms of abuse that one can encounter, like emotional abuse, that causes trauma and affects most times our mental health. That one too is a dangerous form of silent abuse that we don't really see it. But when you see someone who goes through that, you will recognize it if you are in that field. So we encourage them to speak up. Most time, the way our society is fashioned, men are assumed to be the strongest sex, and women the vulnerable ones.
The strongest gender.
Gender, yes. But most times you find out that some men are also soft inside, and they don't have whom to talk to or whom to share whatever they're good. There are men that their wives beat up. There are men that undergo different forms of abuses in their homes, even at their place of work. There are men that during separation, the wives try to use the children to punish the man. And such men, we welcome them and we listen to them, and of course we intervene.
Have you had, since your assumption into office, have you had such cases of men actually speaking up? You know what, I'm very particular about the men. Now, it's easy to sit here and say, well, we're encouraging men to speak up, but how can we really get men to speak up? Because sometimes men are comfortable, passing messages in their DM and saying, I'm going through an abuse, but please don't speak about it. I've had a man speak to me in that light, and I never spoke about it because that's his privacy. So how can we really get men to really talk about this thing, ensuring that their ego is still intact? And have you had men walk up to your ministry with that complaint?
Yes, I have. And these men, when you promise them confidentiality, they will trust you and they will open up. You see them tearing up. Like, it is the society. And for us to start encouraging men to speak up, we have to start from the boy child. And we have to recognize them. We have to make them to believe that it is okay to seek for help and cry out. You don't have to die in that condition. You have to speak out, seek for help, cry out. Let people who are in that line of activity attend to you and help you out where help is needed. Instead of, bottling it up, you find out that most of the men that bottled up abuses, especially from a tender age, when they are grown, they become troublesome adults. At any slightest provocation, they snap. And when you trace back, you see that probably it's childhood trauma or abuses that had gone on when they were much younger that they didn't talk about. Because the society opens up its arms more towards the women. Women are always the one crying out, but men also do cry.
Well, even the men are protesting that how many Women's Day, how many Mother's Day do we have? And what happens to Father's Day? Even on Father's Day, women want to drag that with them as well. That's on a lighter note. But of course, in line with protection policies now, I'm very passionate about the female genital mutilation. Well, it's an age-long practice. Now, would this administration of Dr. Peter Mbah effect a law cancelling it out totally? That practice, especially in the rural areas where the numbers may be unspecified and underreported. Because a research conducted by the Ministry of Gender Affairs that you're heading today in 2016 saw that Akuke community scoring an average of 81 to 85% on the prevalence rate of female genital mutilation. Akuke is in Enugu here. Yeah. So what's the situation now in that community, Akuke? What reports did you receive when you were handed over to from your predecessor about that report, and what are you going to do about it?
Akuke is a town in Enugu South local government. It's close by here, okay. And it baffles you that such act still exists even in this recent time. But I can tell you for sure that in collaboration with some CSOs and NGOs, we've been able to go in there and sensitize them and, tell them the impact of that. That's the female genital mutilation, and that it doesn't enhance the female body, rather it causes more danger to the female body than help. you know.
Aside from sensitization, let's take this a little deeper. Are there people that you saw? Are there girls that you can say, I saw these girls and this is what has happened? And what have you done to their mothers for doing that?
Ever since I got into office, I've not gotten any reports regarding female genital mutilation so far. And I know it's because it has been taken care of there. Right now, during the International Day for Female Genital Mutilation, we went over there and there are no indices that shows that this is also happening. And we have NGOs that helped women. That NGO, I guess it was championed by Action Aid, that helped women to speak out. And they went to the chiefs of the town to cry out that enough is enough, that they don't want this to keep happening. But that was before I got into office. So I believe that helped in curbing it drastically. If there is any activity of such going on now, the ministry is not yet aware of it. And once we get any reports regarding that, there is a law against that, and we're going to use that law or whomever the offenders of such acts.
Okay, so speaking about child, let's talk about adoption, which is also part of the things that your ministry oversees. In Enugu particularly, what's the adoption policy like? Because I've had feelers from people who have been trying to adopt babies in Enugu saying it's really a tough one. So sometimes this leaves people no other choice but to, seek to get self-help by either contracting directly with the persons who are pregnant and don't want the baby, because there's always a long line in the Ministry of Gender Affairs. So tell me about your adoption policy and how do you intend to help parents who are seeking for children?
Yeah, when I got into office, we have to look through our adoption processes, and we noticed there are a lot of loopholes that needs to be amended. We started by our documentation. We have to enhance our documentation. We added more documents to authenticate the process. And the truth about adoption is that parents who are believing God, or rather couple who believe God, who are believing God for their own child, are so desperate that they would want it to happen immediately. Then the question I ask such parents is, would you want your teenage girl to get pregnant and give it up for adoption? And the answer is usually no. Then you ask yourself, how long does it take to carry a pregnancy? 9 months, almost a year. Another question you should ask yourself is, okay, how many girls get pregnant in a year that don't want the pregnancy and come to us for us to accept them, house them, support them, clothe them till their delivery dates, and give out that child for adoption? Everyone wants easy and quick adoption. But when you sit back and ask yourself this critical question, you will understand that adoption is not as easy as it seems. And secondly, we're talking about a child here. We are not talking about going to a market and purchasing an item and stocking it up, and you come, I sell to you.
But these are also children that need foster care. So how do you go about that? So since your time as commissioner, have you adopted any babies out?
Yes, we have.
How many?
We have adopted about 7 of them. Okay. And secondly, most of the children we have in our homes, we have shelters where we keep abandoned children. Most of those children either have one police case or NAPTIC case, a case of child trafficking. So we must wait till they get through with the case before we can place, because unfortunately, those children, those kids serve as evidence to that crime. So it's not something that we will hurriedly give out. So adoption takes it's a process, and it's a process that whomever that is venturing into it has to exercise patience.
What's your tracking method? I'm going to give you a case instance. There's this journalist who had an undercover story. I think this was early last year.
Yeah.
Something in Anambra. Yes. So what's your track up process?
Yeah.
In terms of tracking that the child is not being, what's the word again? Trafficked, being used for ritual purposes. Do you have a tracking method to follow up on the adopted babies and to ensure that they're still with the parents?
Yes, that is the point I tried to make earlier.
Okay.
By saying that we have to review our documentation. Like now, we have sometimes international adoption. If you come for that, there are series of documents you need to provide for us before a child can be placed to you. With those documents, if we try to get in touch with the child and we can't, we write to the embassy, and with those documents, which includes your international passport, your social security number, your tax clearance forms, and other forms. If you are a citizen of that country, the international passport of that country must be provided. And with that, if once in a while we call up, we don't bother parents because it's assumed that that is their child. It is their child actually, but once in a while we need to reach out to be sure that that child is not trafficked. So when we try to get to you and we can't get to you, the only thing we'll do is we attach our documents and forward to the embassy that we can't get hold of this person because of ABC, and that way you provide the child for us.
Good.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit how much it is to adopt a baby? But because I hear that there are different prices. So a baby boy is sometimes more costly than the baby girl. These are also societal issues that we have to talk about. So how easy is it to adopt a child, and how much does it cost a parent, an aspiring parent, to get?
There is no particular amount. We don't sell children.
Okay.
What happens is, if a young girl, a teenager, gets pregnant, probably the parents don't want the society to know, or the guardian don't want the society to know, or even an adult that don't want the pregnancy, the person will come to us and say, I don't want this pregnancy and I don't want to abort this pregnancy. So what we do is we house you. We'll put you in one of our shelters. We house you and we'll clothe you till you give birth. So after giving birth, the next step is for us to calculate. Of course, those shelters, we pay them. They calculate the amount which the ministry monitors. They work according to the ministry's templates. The amount they use in feeding you and bed per night. And we give it to the adoptive parents to pay. So there is no fixed price, and there is nothing like because it's a male, is this amount because it's a female. No, it's uniform.
It's good that you're giving clearance to these things, because these are words on the streets and that we need to give clarity to, so that people can go through the right channel, which is the Ministry of Gender Affairs, to get their babies. Now, tell us your plans and the protection initiatives that your ministry intends to work on for the vulnerable women and the children. What are your plans?
Yeah, our plans for let me begin with the children.
Okay.
The justice reform teams, they are reviewing the child rights law, but we use it, and we also use the VAP law. That's for the children, the women, and the vulnerable. And our plan is to make sure that no child in Enugu State is being abused, is being exploited, is being trafficked. And when you think about all those things, you see, it looks as if it's not achievable, but it's achievable. We'll take it one step at a time. And when you maybe arrest a perpetrator of an abuse, or somebody who abused sexually a minor, and you make sure that justice takes its full course on the person, it will make others to realize that this is actually business unusual. You are not going to go scot-free if you do this. With regards to the women, His Excellency, the governor of Enugu State, had as we all know, is no longer news, is so much interested in empowering women because he believed that if he wants to achieve 0% poverty rates in Enugu State, you have to promote gender equality and you have to empower the women. Most times, most women are the breadwinners of their home. So we have series of plans and activities lined up for the women. As a matter of fact, on the 4th of next month, to the 7th of next month, the federal minister for women affairs will be visiting Enugu to empower 5,000 women.
Honorable Uju Ohane.
Yes. And His Excellency, the governor, had already paid the 450 million naira required as a counterpart fund for Nigeria for Women project. But Enugu State will participate in the second batch, which will come up any moment.
What will be the criteria for empowering the women? Are they women of Enugu in state, or just women that live in Enugu State?
Women that live in Enugu State. In Enugu State, we don't discriminate because we believe if we empower every woman, the society will be better and our economy will grow.
Let me talk to you a bit about these children who have been exploited by their parents and guardians that hawk on the streets. What are your plans for those children? Do you intend to keep them away from the streets? Or does the governor have any plans to take these children? Because if you're talking about the child rights law and the VAT law that you want to put into effect, that is a critical part. Children are being exploited, are used for merchandise. You know, their parents just say, okay, go and sell. And these children stay out as late as 8, 9. You still see children. And also another thing that we really need to talk about in Enugu we're not talking about is these children who are like street urchins on the streets. They're like, I think it's an organization sort of. They are along Holy Ghost. Their moms are probably sitting around and they go around to beg and all that. What's the plan?
The plan is to make sure that every child gets back to school. And that is why in Enugu State, we are all aware that basic education is free. That's from primary 1 to JSS 3. And we are all aware that the government had removed all hidden charges in our public schools. And why is that so? So that children will have no reason to stay out of school. And I believe so much with these smart schools that are being built in every ward in Enugu State, that by the time we are done, every child will go back to school, and not only going back to school, but receiving proper and adequate and advanced education. Now, when you talk about those beggars on the streets and those who use their children to hawk, it's so heartbreaking to me especially and to the government. And because of that, we have a task force that raid them.
Okay.
When they are being raided, we take the children to our shelter and take the mothers to our rehabilitation center.
When did you start the task force? When did it start?
The task force have been on for some months now.
Because I've not seen, I still see children along the road.
Yes, it's something that we are going to take time.
Okay.
And one thing that I have observed is that most of these children, they don't stay within Enugu. I don't know where they are coming from, but the more we are reading them, the more we are seeing them. But we believe that with time, the numbers have drastically reduced.
So can you give me a timeline to that? Because we're going to be monitoring. I am personally going to be monitoring that. Give me a timeline.
Of course, it's not something that will say today we are going to, finish raiding these children and taking them off the street. It's something that we are gradually going to, because it had eating deep into them. They are not interested in going back to school. They are not interested in learning craft or learning any handiwork. They are interested in that money. And we are even pleading that the public should stop giving them money. When you stop giving them money, they go back to school. The public have to also help us to make them to believe that begging is not a way of life. And there is time for everything. As a child, you need to go back to school and at least acquire the basic education before you start fighting for money. Money is not everything. And we are working so hard. Like I said, we have task force that are making sure that those children are being taken away. Sometimes 3 weeks or thereabouts, we raided Holy Ghost.
Now, how many children did you take?
About 18 of them.
Okay.
And about 20-something adults.
Where are they now?
Some are in MNA Rehabilitation Center.
Okay.
Some we have reunited with their families. We took the pain of taking them back to their states to reunite them with their families. And most of those beggars, when we reunite them with their families, we find out that the families don't even know that this is what they do. Most of them, the families have been looking for them.
Great. That's a very great conversation there. And we will work with you and the Commissioner for Education, Professor Mbah, to make sure, because I think there's a collaboration there between you and him, to make sure that we see you take the children off and then we see him put them in the school.
Thank you.
But thank you for sharing your thoughts with us tonight. Honorable Mrs. Ngozi Valentina Eni, it was a delight speaking with you. She's an Honorable Commissioner for Children, Gender Affairs and Social Development. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And that's the much that we can take tonight right here on Afia TV News, streaming live from Enugu, Nigeria. Do follow us on our social media handles at Afia TV Official. And on behalf of the entire production team, I am Amazing Grace Ajayi. Thank you so much for joining us and good night.